Hello again everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am McSnazzy as always, and today we are back in Planet Zoo working on our Ranger Park Zoo project once again. Now this is episode 9 of the series. If you have not seen episode 1 through 8 or missed any in between, you'll see in the top right corner right now I'll put a card up there. You can press on the playlist for the Ranger Park Zoo series and see any episode that you missed before you watch this one, because every one of the episodes has been a good time and we've always built something pretty cool. So for this episode, we're going to continue in the Big Cats area that we've sort of been doing the last episode or so. And on the other side of the Lion's Den habitat that we did last time, we're going to be doing the Bengal tiger habitat here today. Now this one was a fun one. We didn't do anything too big and crazy like the Lion's Den enclosure where we built that huge sort of like modern island area where you could get a really good view of the lions. But this one it's a pretty big build. I don't want to say it's a small build or not like super exciting, because I still think it's probably one of the best builds in the zoo so far, and I'm really happy with the result. And you know, I spent a lot of time on it, of course, but it's not as like crazy in terms of like changing everything we do with the habitat by putting the education center in the middle like we did with the lions and everything. But we are going to do a cool cave viewing in this episode where you can see the Bengal tigers when they're sleeping in their cave from this little building that we're going to do down to the right there. If you just saw, yeah, down here right now on the screen. So for the Bengal tiger habitat, I wanted to do sort of a dense jungle. It's going to be kind of tiered. It's going to slope downward from the top, where it's going to be kind of like this mountain up here at the top. It's going to slope downward. We're going to build a nice stream going through it that's kind of like a rapids with a couple waterfalls on each level in order to go out into a little pond in the end and just add a little bit of flair to this whole habitat right here. And I think it looks really great in the end. I'm really happy with everything in this episode. I know they say that every time, but you know, I'm really trying to put out my best work. So with every episode, I'll probably always say that, and I'm sure you guys know that by now. But now that we have all the framework for the habitat, I'm going to start on this little this is the cave viewing area. Now in order to build irregular shapes with buildings in this game, it's going to make the roofs look kind of weird. So this one ends up a little bigger than I necessarily needed it to be. So the this underground cave viewing area is going to be quite large, and I try to fill it up with some stuff, but we don't necessarily fill it to completion. And I would say in the future, when we continue with the Big Cats area and potentially do the jaguar habitat on the other side of that viewing, we might condense those into one like cave viewing area with both animals, because it is pretty big. And I'll talk more about that in the real time. I don't want to talk too much about that right now, because on the screen right now we are doing some more terrain work. And here's sort of the idea I was trying to go for with this stream running through the different tiers that we're building here, sort of like the tiers of elevation. And I wanted to have the stream flowing through like a rapids waterfall at each tier, and I thought it just would add something cool, you know, just a little bit of extra flair to the habitat, not the usual stuff that we do for every habitat. And we've been doing a lot of African habitats lately, so it's been grasslands, not a ton of foliage, not super dense trees or vegetation or anything, and I really miss doing those because those are really fun to do. And so this one was a real treat for me to build. So I do a lot of foliage work, and I'm sure you saw in the sort of glam shot cinematics at the start of the episode that we do a lot of that. But I'm really happy with how it turned out in that sense, and it was a lot of fun being able to use a lot of vegetation again, where I've really been limited with these African builds that we've been doing lately, and I've been trying to stick with the realism, so you know, I don't go overboard with the vegetation. But what you just saw on the screen as I was talking about something completely different was me finishing up that sort of cave viewing outside, like the shell of it. So I wanted to do a cave itself attached to that building, so that's what you're going to kind of see on the screen with all this rock work. I'm reusing some of the rock work in the Lion's Den habitat because we did some good rock work there, and there's no sense in going through and doing all the rocks again because it already looks like a mountain. So here's the start of our vegetation here, and I'm only going to do a little bit right here in this sort of go, but I wanted to go, as I was saying before, and you can see on the side there the rocks there, yeah, the cave viewing. We'll look more at that in first person, but I wanted to go for a super dense sort of jungle feel for the Bengal tigers. Tigers themselves live in very dense environments and require a lot of coverage and foliage, and they're pretty much happy with any sort of coverage, but their bar in this game goes all the way up to max. So I really wanted to take advantage of that, do a ton of vegetation, and I realized they're pretty good jumpers here, so I'm going to make this trench a little deeper as well. But in the end, we're going to put a glass wall there anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now, I haven't been using glass walls at all in the zoo so far, except the lions in habitat last time, and we're going to use it again here. And that's sort of kind of a trend as we get towards the bigger, more dangerous animals in the zoo. In sort of a realistic sense, in a lot of zoos, this is where they'll have sort of the glass walls separating you from the animals, so you can't necessarily jump in. Like, you could probably jump into the African savanna, of course. Would you really want to? No. Would you really be in that much danger? Probably not. But when it comes to the Bengal tigers, you'd probably be in a lot more danger. So that's sort of why the zoos in real life, and what I'm trying to do with this project, is put, see, this glass wall up so that you can't possibly get in there, even if you really wanted to jump over. Not that anyone would want to jump over, but especially for the Bengal tigers, there's some massive cats, so they could probably rip you to shreds pretty quickly. So we gotta be safety conscious in a realism aspect, and it also just looks like it's more big ticket, more expensive animal later in the zoo. You spend a little more on their habitat, it's a little bigger of a habitat, etc., stuff like that. But here we're going to do sort of a little design on this glass, because the regular glass looks really boring, let's be honest. It's just like a straight up glass with a little plastic bar in the middle. It's probably a metal bar, but it's boring. So I wanted to do something different here. So we're going to use these sort of East Asia support pieces that we have in the game to sort of outline this, so it kind of looks like a little temple, like an Indian temple that we're doing here. And I really wanted it to go into this sort of like jungle vibe. Hey, it's a temple. I know we're not doing the jaguars yet, and this is the Bengal tiger, but you know, same sort of feel. The tigers, they live in the jungle, even if it's not the jaguar who lives in like the dense Amazon rainforest. It's still the Bengal tiger. They live in jungles in India, of course, you know, that exists. And so I wanted to do something like that. And it feels like a temple in the end, because in this middle part here, I'm going to put sort of like this rock mountain with a bunch of foliage in it. So it looks like you're walking through the jungle, as I cut big right there, and you kind of see what I'm talking about. But you're walking through the jungle down the path, and you're going to look in at these Bengal tigers in their natural habitat, so to say. And it just feels really immersive. It really makes the guest or the peep in the game go on sort of an experience of, traversing through the jungle to see these animals. You really feel like you're in their zone, in their habitat, and that's what I was going for with this build. I don't know if it's super innovative like what I thought the lion's den habitat was. I thought that was pretty innovative because we sort of went for this island viewing area, and it was pretty like different compared to the normal zoo feel. This one feels like it's more of the normal zoo feel, where you're kind of, looking out from the outskirts in instead of being inside it and looking out into their habitat. Now you're kind of like walking around the outside and looking into their zone. And, it's more traditional in that sense, but I think it's really cool also, and I don't want to necessarily say innovative because that's like, it makes me sound like I'm inventing something here, but it's more of an experience for the guests, and I guess I'm getting a little crazy into this now, but that's sort of what I want to do with the zoo. I want to make it realistic, I want to make it fun, and I want it to be cool. So if you're thinking about what the guest sees and they're walking through, just like, it kind of feels like a temple jungle field, and you're kind of in the Bengal tiger's habitat. You're kind of in what they'd feel like, what they see every day, and you really feel closer to the animal. So that's why I think this one sort of sticks a little more with me and with the end result, is because it feels like it's more than just a zoo habitat. It's kind of like more of like Animal Kingdom, Disney World sort of stuff, where you're really going into theming with the animals along with it. And I'm not saying that this is a Disney World sort of, Animal Kingdom-esque habitat, that it's that over the top and everything. It still feels like a realistic, everyday zoo habitat in the end of the day, but, it feels cooler when you add sort of these viewing areas that are a little little extra in a sense, not just your regular just path looking over a little short wall into a cool habitat. You know, you're kind of bringing the path into the habitat itself and really immersing the path within it. So enough of that. That's just me going on a tangent about that, of course, but you know, I gotta talk a little bit over this time lapse, but let's talk about what's actually going on screen. So what we're doing here is we're just finishing up the foliage, and as I said before, and I probably said about 3 times now, and I probably will say again in the real-time portion, is I really wanted to do a lot of vegetation here because we haven't really got to do it in a while. So I really went crazy with this, but I wanted the Bengal tigers to not be stressed because the tapirs and the anteaters, the first habitat we did when we started this zoo about a month and a half ago, they're sort of stressed out now because I didn't give them enough coverage, and I've went back and I've changed it a little so they have an area to go to. But for the tigers here, I really wanted to make it really immersive, in a sense that the tigers have a lot of places to hide. So if they don't want to get seen by the guests, they don't have to be seen by the guests, and they don't have to go to a tiny corner in order to not be seen. They can go almost anywhere in the habitat and not be seen. Really the only place they can be seen is like out in the front by this pond area where they're getting a drink or something, but still I put a lot of trees there in the end, as you'll see in the real-time portion, because I do cut a little bit of the foliage work here because I didn't want the whole thing to be just foliage work. But it's more of a sense where the guests have to sort of look for the animal, find the animal, not necessarily, oh, there it is, of course the animal's right out there in the open, it's a zoo, I came to see this. No, you're gonna have to take some time, stay there, and kind of really look for the tiger in order to see it. So that's really what I wanted to go for there. I think that's realistic. It may be more of a conservation sort of standpoint on this habitat, which is fine. You know, I think there's a big mix when it comes to zoos, and some animals, you know, get more stressed out than others. With the cheetahs especially, I added some zones for them, as well as I could with an African grassland sort of biome style. I made some places for them because they're notorious for getting stressed and everything. So that's what I wanted to go for. I wanted to tell you guys a little bit of the reasoning behind all the foliage, other than I just had a lot of fun putting a bunch of stuff down and making it look really pretty. But we're going to jump into the real-time portion now and check it out in first-person view so you can really get that feel of the habitat. So I'll see you guys there in a second. Alright everybody, now we are back in the real-time portion of the video, and let's look through what we did with the final products of the Bengal tiger build here. We're going to start over at the Big Cats area sign. We're going to make our way over past the lion's den, and right over here, haven't done a whole lot else but this Bengal tiger exhibit, but I think it looks great. It's kind of like hidden back here. You see the sign, but you kind of like gotta go into this sort of jungle area, which I kind of went for here, and I really like how this sort of structure turned out. It's just kind of a little bit of flair to add to the area. It doesn't really give you a ton of sun protection, but it's a cool little aspect, kind of like you're in like a jungle temple for these tigers. But here's some of the views you get as a guest in this first person mode here. You can see the tigers running around down there. And they do have a lot of cover, a lot of vegetation, shade, and everything, because that is what they want at the end of the day. And it was really nice to be able to do an animal that liked a ton of coverage, because then you can really make the habitat look really beautiful like it is right here. I just love this view right here with the waterfall coming down and the streams with lots of heavy foliage and everything, and there's the Bengal tiger running around right now. And it looks great. I really like how this turned out. I like the style it ended up being in, something a little different since we've been doing sort of an African theme the past maybe 3 episodes or so. It was fun to sort of get into this like jungle temple sort of theme here, if we're not necessarily going like full-on Asian theme. So it's fun and it's nice, and I had a good time making this one. But let's step down into the tiger cave viewing area down here. Something a little different. It's a big space, and it's hard to fill these big indoor spaces like this in Planet Zoo, because it's hard to build the buildings in these odd shapes and still make it work. So it kind of had to be bigger, but in order to get more light in here, because the lights in the game don't really work unless you turn on the nighttime, I had to do a lot of these windows up here, bit of a skylight to get some light in. I made this sort of rug here. It just kind of helps break up the space, but there's not a whole lot you can do here, and I'm not super duper happy with how this turned out, so we might go back and change it a little bit once we get maybe some more inspiration on what to do inside here. But I didn't want to do like an education area like I had been doing with a lot of the other education sort of centers, because I don't think you'd be doing it down here if, say, the tigers are sleeping, because they don't know you're in there behind this one-way glass. So, and I even have these signs that tell you to be quiet here, so I don't think having presentations in here would be good. So it's just kind of another education area, a cool little building, so you can get a little bit of a cave view of the Bengal tigers while they're sleeping. So I think it's cool. I did have an idea of, in the next episode, went through the wall there, if we do a jaguar habitat over there for another big cat, we could maybe open this up so it's kind of a dual viewing where you have the Bengal tigers and the jaguars in this big space, because it is a big space, but they're kind of themed together, so I think it could work if we had cave viewings on both sides. Maybe this could be sort of a big cat cave house or something like that. I don't know what we'd call it, but let's go all the way over here before we jump out of first person and show you what I did off camera for a little bit of backstage here, to keep that realism going as always, because that is essential for us. So where we are now is we're on the other side of the sort of lion habitat, ends there. You walk down here to a staff only area, and I've made some fences, and I wanted to show this in first person. So here's the lion's den habitat. We have a copy paste of the staff and keeper hut that we did over at the giraffe and Savannah Safari, and then I built this very generic sort of concrete building where I thought a lot of the big cats in this area would go during the winter, because there's really no space within their habitats that would really be suitable in the cold weather. I'm sure the Bengal tigers would be fine potentially because maybe they're used to snow, but the lions wouldn't be, so they'd need somewhere to go. And in here I've just shoved a couple staff buildings, another keeper hut, a couple staff centers and everything, just to keep it all nice and tidy. So let's jump out of first person here and get a nice big view over here, so you can kind of see what that staff building does for the area in terms of realism. And I'm thinking for the big cats area, we're gonna top it off around this way. I've sort of finished this this path here to sort of limit myself from going a little too far this way, because the zoo's already kind of heading in this direction lately. And I think next episode we might go over here and tackle some of that, step out of the big cats area for a little bit. But I want to put probably a restaurant here, do jaguars, and we might do the Siberian tigers, which is the other tigers, but it's basically like the same reskin of the Bengal tigers, so I didn't know if we'll necessarily do that. But also the snow leopards are big cats, so we're going to do that. But I thought this staff building would sort of service this area, even I guess it's kind of far now. We might change how the path goes. It might go around this way instead, in order to have that staff building do that. But I was thinking the jaguars here, so it could work potentially. But well, that's a future problem. But I really like how this turned out in the end. It's got a nice, cool like jungle temple feel for the Bengal tigers, and sort of this nice little Indian feel that where the Bengal tigers are from. I love this environment. Made it nice and wooded, lots of foliage, lots of vegetation. They have lots of space where they can just hide away from the guests, like they would in their real life habitats. So that's perfect. And I really like that we got to use a lot of the temperate trees that are native to sort of our Midwest zoo style that we're using everywhere. So it keeps with this realism sort of aspect of that this would probably be what a Bengal tiger habitat would look like in real life. We did a little bit of a climbing structure here, just something very generic, because they don't necessarily need climbing, but it's sort of a cool way to get up this waterfall slope if they wanted to, and they can get on that, but it's a little small for them. They're pretty big tigers. But yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope you guys liked how this turned out. I think it looks really beautiful, nice and wooded, a little different than what we've been doing lately. We've been doing a lot of African themed stuff, a lot of open grassland, and this is much more foliage centric, and I think a lot prettier than the other. Is the tiger really sleeping right there next to this food? There's not even a bed there. Oh well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in and watching this episode. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Stay tuned on the channel for more stuff like this. We're doing more and more with this Ranger Park Zoo, and I feel like every build we're getting bigger and better, and we're getting more refined, and I think the zoo's starting to look really, really great. So please like, comment, and subscribe. We hit that 100 subscriber goal. We're going to do a thank you stream, so let's try to get there. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you next time.